This podcast is brought to you by the Education and Youth Board of Estonia, member of ERYICA, the European Youth Information and Counseling Agency. Podcast is an activity of project YIMinds, Youth Information Minding Young People's Mental Health. I am your host, Marit Kannelmäe-Geerts. So on this episode, we will be talking about identifying mental health and well-being of young people. And we will talk about the awareness and the information we need about mental health and well-being. And also we will be talking with you, two people here. So I have here Evely Pajula from Estonia and Eleni Pornari from Cyprus. But I will give also the microphones for you to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Eleni Pornari and I am from Cyprus. I am currently on my second year of law school at the University of Cyprus, and I am also a member of the Sixth House of Young Representatives in Cyprus, in the Health Committee, where our topic this year was mental health and youth.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am Evely. I am a youth worker here in Estonia, in Tallinn. I manage a small team in Nõmme region, and I have been connected to youth work for quite a while now, and mental health is a big part of it.
Thank you and welcome, both of you. So before we start, I thought that to get into the topic, it's good to ask for you, like what is something that you enjoy for your well-being? So if you would think like five things that make you feel good, then what would they be? Evely.
I like being outdoors. I like doing many activities. I like good food. My favorite are pastries and morning porridge. I like swimming and I like the people around me. That keeps me well.
Good. Almost all the vitamins of mental health is good and present. And what about you?
I really like being surrounded by friends and family. I also really like going to the beach because I grew up in an island, so the beach keeps my inner child happy. I really, really love chocolate ice cream. And I also really love Christmas. I wish Christmas was all year round. It's my favorite holiday.
Oh, sounds really nice. Many things that already talking about them makes you feel very good. But when we talk about mental health and well-being, then Evely, what would you say how would you define mental health and well-being of young people? What is it? What does it mean to you?
I think mental health and well-being is the same for all human beings. I really like the way Peaasi has made mental health vitamins. I like to think through them as like well-being. If you're able to communicate, if you're able to move, eat, sleep, and you feel well, that's probably what it is for you. But if you face obstacles for a longer period of time, or the obstacles don't let you take part in things you love, or just make you refrain from activities, I think this is when it's smart to look into the symptoms more, and maybe it's a obstacle to look into. Obviously, when there is a certain diagnosis for something, then that's a certain sign of mental health disorder.
Mm-hmm. But when you, Eleni, look at like young people around you, like what do you see when it comes to their mental health, and what do you see as defines it?
If I could describe mental health in a non-scientific way for young people to understand, I would say it's how a person feels emotionally. It's important to know that mental health affects everyone, whether someone suffers from it or not. It's also very important to note that young people suffering from mental health are being discouraged to not to do things they initially would love to do. And I think that's not fair for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When we think about this stress, then what would you say is a difference between like having a bad day or having a difficult week, and then when we say, okay, this young person really has like mental health worries or problems that we as youth worker or youth information worker should address, what would you say like are the best keys to understand?
I think it's important to understand that bad day or bad feeling is a normal feeling to feel. Like, it does happen from time to time for all of us, and usually it passes rather quickly even. And sometimes it does not, and that's okay too. But as a youth worker, I would say the important thing for me is creating trusting bonds and relationships with youngsters. And when I see certain patterns, and I get used to them, and there is a sudden change in it, or there are certain type of things that you should look out for. Very serious ones are, for example, talking about death or suicide or self-harm. Then it's something definitely to look into and start conversations about proactively.
What kind of distress do you see around in young people?
Of course, academic stress is something that I really notice among youngsters, especially in university. I think it's because the system of our, especially in Cyprus, focuses more on the academic value of a person. Like, I think the system focuses more on the grades a young people gets rather than their mental health.
Yeah. But when you look at now, like youth work as a safe space for young people, what effect can it have for someone who is struggling with their mental health?
I think if a person seeks help, it's very crucial for them to be surrounded by a safe environment and a safe space. You can do that by creating a supportive atmosphere and reassuring them that your conversations will remain confidential. So even though a person knows that they are seeking help, they will not feel that patient-doctor relationship, but they will feel like talking to a friend they trust about something that is bothering them. It is also important in the environment to be careful of the language you use. And it is very significant to not use labels or discriminations in this safe space, so that they can be encouraged to speak up.
Evely, when you work with young people, what do you see, and also in general, what are the main worries that young people face, or main disorders then that you can say that are most...
When I work with young people, there are a lot of struggles they have that are quite common to have. And if they go unnoticed for quite a while, this is when the problems start, in my opinion. For example, school bullying is a very big thing. And even though there have been like years of, helping methods going into it, it's still not enough. Youngsters still face it daily, and they need professionals to help them overcome this. And sometimes it doesn't need a lot. Sometimes it needs, like, you will be there to listen and offer that, do you know what, go talk to this about your teacher, or do you want me to come with you? And that's enough and could stop a series of the rest of the things that could happen after this. But serious disorders or things that I have come across have been actual depression. It is a very serious thing, and I think if you even haven't seen it close as a specialist ever, you still need to take into account and understand what it really is. It is a word that kids also tend to use a lot as soon as they learn about it, and they might not understand the whole of it, which can be problematic in different ways. For example, they start helping create stigma around it, or they don't even realize it in themselves if they take it too easily. But also ADHD, obviously with the younger kids, I think it's important to understand it, because youth workers need to plan activities for youngsters. And if you just keep it in your head that some people have less of an attention span, they definitely, it makes the rest of the activity easier for you. And youth work tends to involve food in a lot of things to get the youngsters to, they think it motivates them. But food has a lot of very different topics around it that could be harmful. So I think a youth worker just needs to be very, keep attention to how they speak about it, how is their own relationship to food, to not carry on things that could affect youngsters in a bad way. But I think there is a lot to take into account, and you have to take into account in a way that you just understand that they're there and just are ready to raise conversations about it and know where to turn to when things go bad.
But how much knowledge do you think youth workers need on mental health disorders, for example?
I think it's definitely helpful if you have enough to understand where your boundaries lie. It's helpful for yourself to keep your own mental health in place, because a youth worker can do a lot, but it definitely has a road where you wouldn't cross over and where you need to involve others. Especially working with underage kids. So I think it is very useful for me personally when I have attended trainings on, for example, environmental friendly practices. There we talked about eco and anxiety. I've also learned about depression and suicide. I have learned about quiet minutes and mindfulness, and I think they're all useful, but I could do the same thing that I do today without those very specific knowledges, because at the end of the day is that you need to create this safe relationship, and you need to create this safe room as a youth worker. And that is a lot for mental health.
It's very nice to see that also with the previous episode, some of the truth or the pinpoints that we tackled there as well come here the same, that the youth worker still has to do their own or play their own role, not to go too far with helping, but also that the knowledge is there also for yourself and then to notice the young people as well. But when we look at the world today, it's very difficult and confusing for young people. There are so many different crises going on at the same time. Then how do you see that it affects the young people, and maybe even further, what are their needs now when the world around them is so in crisis, let's say?
In modern times, the rates of youngsters suffering with the mental illness are increasing more and more. And this can be caused by plethora of reasons. One of these reasons is the fast pace of life these days. This fast pace of life, apart from the pressure and anxiety it causes, it makes it impossible for a young person to sit and relax and discover what lies even in the darkest corners of their brains. I think young people are in need of adventures that help them relax or be surrounded by nature. As far as crises are concerned, such as wars or climate change, these crises can cause eco-anxiety, which is basically, as I view it, worrying about the future, what could happen in the future. So that's the most significant reason why eco-anxiety is caused through crisis.
Mm-hmm. But Evely, you, what are the things you see mostly that young people worry about in the middle of this, what is happening in the world at the moment?
I think Eleni has covered quite a lot. The wars don't affect only adults. Youngsters might not always even understand the whole of it, but they do understand that their parents are anxious. They do understand that the people around them are worried, and that makes them worried because nobody wants to see their close ones in distress. Definitely everything related to environment is something that is a topic, and if it's not the youngster who is knowledgeable enough to know about the future, they do understand the discussion around it, and that it's not positive. And I think it causes worries. But I think besides the big crisis, there are very everyday life things that still cause problems, and maybe this is what is causing maybe a little bit more anxiety than before, that youngsters still need to learn how to build friendships. They still need to get done their schoolwork. They still need to do very basic things. And on top of that, they need to deal with very, very big, crazy topics that come like once in a century.
I think that's very to the point that we often see that young people actually, they don't have a choice to say like, I can't do it at the moment. I will take a mental health day in school unless their parents are okay with it or their teachers. Often adults, we can do that somehow or another, but young people, I think it's very important that you bring it out, that they are somehow having to face all the everyday life, and then next to it are really big things that even us as adults, we can't explain it all or we don't know exactly. So that it's very important then to have people around who say, either give the answers or say like, I also don't know, let's look into this together. So thank you for bringing that in as well. So now we are in a place where we will look into a story from a young person, and I ask you to listen and then reflect on it. Like, what do you hear? How usual it is? Or what does it say to you? So the story of a young person goes like this. The situation that made me realize the importance of quality and understandable information regarding mental health issues was when my sister was diagnosed with anxiety disorder. I can still recall her face when the doctor prescribed medication for her mental illness, which she initially refused, saying, I am not a crazy person, I don't need to take pills. My response was, you're not crazy just because you need to take medication. A response that might sound reasonable to a stranger, but at that moment I realized that I didn't have the right arguments to make her understand that just because she was going through a difficult time, it didn't mean she was crazy, and of course neither are other people who take any kind of medication. At that moment I understood how unaware I was about the critical issue, and I realized that I was not the only one who was so uninformed. So, what does this story tell you?
I think this testimonial is a great example about the effect that myths have surrounding mental health. And it's also a great example of self-stigmatization, I think it's called. Apparently this person, just like many other people, think that every person that has to take medical support or treatment for their mental health is going to be labeled as crazy. Whilst it's very normal for someone to seek help from resources such as prescriptions.
Do you think in Cyprus it's still different between physical health and mental health when people get help?
Of course. This may be due to... Cyprus is a very small island where everybody knows everyone. So there are no secrets in our society. And I think this plays a very significant role in the myths surrounding mental health.
What do you see? You already said that actually you do see the stigmatization or the fear of stigmatization among young people. Is it the same in Estonia with...
As everything, it depends on a person, but it's definitely there. There are definitely youngsters who have it either themselves or at home. And I think in this story, Eleni brought it out well, that it is very sad that the person has something they have to deal with on their own. And then there is all this thought around this that is maybe blocking them on their road to recovery.
Have you experienced something like this also in your work, when somebody already is faced with getting help, getting treatment, and then they struggle with accepting the help, because maybe that will enforce the myths or stigma around mental health.
It might be something that not everybody has maybe contact with, but I have like some cases where it is very obvious, where a youngster has thing they really need help with, medical help with, because they already have a diagnosis. And even if it has been clear for quite a while, getting the actual diagnosis is something for any person in any age is hard to deal with. And I think for youngsters especially, because again, as I said, it's the regular growing up that it's already difficult enough. And getting treatment, getting a diagnosis makes it very real, and accepting it can be a very difficult road. And in that way, I think youth workers need to know more, because they could be maybe the only supportive person for that young person in that case.
But what are the symptoms that you think, or as a youth worker, you see that are necessary to notice by youth workers as well? Like we can say, okay, we're not health professionals, but still you are sometimes the only people who see them in a uncontrolled situation, because in school they're quite easy to mask the things as well, because there's a very certain structure to things and very clear roles. But in youth work it's more loose, it's safer, it's open. So what are the symptoms you think are very important to see?
Maybe I mentioned it before, but I think as you're building a relationship with a person, you get to know them, you get to know their patterns. And as you get to know their patterns, when you see like a sudden shift in anything, it's kind of something to look into. It's like either the person was very quiet before and is now very talkative, or the other way around. If there is a very sudden change in their appearance, something more serious is like when they have signs of self-harm, when they start talking about topics that are hard to understand, about death, about sadness, if they have a lot of apathy. And there are many other signs, but I think as you build the relationship with the youngster, you will understand that there is something that has changed. And even if there is no underlying issue, maybe it's like something temporary that has no long-term effect, it's still good to ask about it. It's still supportive to know that there is someone around who just cares, who notices that you, I don't know, cut your hair in the middle of the night someday.
But what's your, if you would say one tip that you would do, like if you notice someone behaving differently or acting differently, looking differently, what is the first thing you would suggest the youth worker would do?
I would just suggest something before that. And in my youth center, we have created a room that we started because we didn't have a place to cry in our youth center. So we called it the cry room. In reality, it's called the quiet room. And I think it is very important that if you create a safe space, you create a space for being on your own. And that creates space for conversation. And now we get to the point where is something up and you see you should take it up. You should have the talk between you at first, without others being around, creating the space mentally that you are like, I'm here, I'm listening, I will not deal with anything else right now, but also the physical space that you can be alone where others aren't there to disturb you. And there are a lot of methods that could help, for example, mirroring the other one or just active listening and so on. And I think it goes to like how professional the specialists are themselves.
That's very nice to hear, because I think quiet room or alone time is not something that is very available for young people throughout the days.
This should be established in universities as well.
Yes,
it will be very
schools.
useful.
Because also in Estonia we have one nature scientist, or Fred Jussi, who always says that this is one of the places also when you're alone, you can look into yourself much easier. And I think young people also need that they have these moments where they can quietly not have to be around other people and show something that is often necessary when you're with other people, but you can be alone and then with an important adult with you to keep you safe if necessary. But Eleni, for you, a question about, we talked about what the youth worker or youth information worker has to notice when something changes among young people they work with. But do you think that young people themselves are aware of what to notice in themselves when things are getting a bit out of balance?
And not many people are aware that mental health is a serious issue and a very common one these days. And the testimonial you have read us before is a great example of the unawareness as well. This causes, some people may be even experiencing or suffering from a mental issue, but without knowing it, so they are unable to seek the help they need. The lack of awareness that surrounding young people and mental health can also be the reason of these myths surrounding mental health. So I think it's really important to bring the awareness needed, especially among young people, because they're the new generation and they should put an end to this circle.
And even though we often say we talk too much about mental health maybe or too much about well-being, then I, from my work, still see there are a lot of people who don't know about the vitamins, which are like the first things you do for your mental health. They don't know the first distress signs or what to do when you're in a normal life situation where you're stressed, like how to calm yourself down, how to support yourself. That still maybe a message for youth workers is that even though you might be in an environment where there's a lot of talks about mental health, then it's never too much to give the information, to bring it into your everyday work, because there might be still some young people who need this extra information or the sign that I'm the one you can talk to about. But now when we approach the end of our podcast, I would ask also both of you to bring out some thoughts that you took from this show, like what you would like to bring as important things that you heard or want to stress once more. So let's start with you.
I think as a youth worker, a lot of youth workers might be scared about the topic of mental health, because once you understand how real it is, you understand the responsibility you carry. But it's also very important that we understand that we can do so much by just being our regular self, by creating the space, creating the trusting relationships, and taking care of us and the youngsters in that way.
Thank you. What about you, Eleni?
In my opinion, mental health is a really crucial matter and should be treated as such in every corner of the world. The stereotypes, labels and myths surrounding mental health should be eliminated as soon as possible. On a happy note, though, I think this podcast is going to bring the awareness that is needed, and it will encourage young people to speak up.
Mm-hmm. I am taking something you like both brought out. One is really that what Evely said is that you somehow you can still do your work even though you don't always know, and on the other hand also the information. And I think with these two things combined means that you can start from where you are. You can still be there for young people and figure things out together. And the more knowledge you get, the more you can actually help and share the information. But still, like, the basis is to be there for young people and really to have this last show we talked more about safe space, but you also brought out very nicely that it is about safe relationships also with adults and among the young people, as we talked about bullying as well. So to help to create these the relationships and the trust, and then step by step also bringing the knowledge and awareness. As I finished last time, I ask also from you, because this is one thing that is crucial for mental health, is something we do for ourselves to keep our well-being in good balance. So Eleni, what do you do on daily basis that helps your well-being?
For maintaining my mental health, I really like being surrounded by my friends and family, especially playing board games with them. They make me laugh so much. But if a person is not able to spend some time with friends and family, I would advise them to put some music on and go for a walk to a place that makes them feel happy and relaxed.
Mm-hmm. So feeling good feelings, being together with people, or if you're not together with people, then moving and experiencing the good feelings. Yes. Evely, you already mentioned many of the vitamins at the beginning, but do you have few more tips or what you do?
Yes, my favorite tip is to go and do something active. Once you do something active, you get tired, you sleep better, you also get hungry, you'll eat better, you can share it with somebody, so there will be a topic of discussion, and also you will feel better just by taking a little walk or a run.
Yes, moving, definitely. A lot of new information comes all the time, how mental health and moving is very connected, and nicely said that it can be a walk, it can be a run, it doesn't matter. You don't have to, it's not like a training for marathon, but it's really for your well-being. Now, last time I said it's about sleeping and resting, so now I think one of the ways I like to keep my mental health in good place is also sharing my struggles with my friends or colleagues, that to be honest also sometimes when it really doesn't work out, and then it's very refreshing to find out that you're not the only person who has it, because we're kind of living in a world where you can get a very crooked picture of other people's lives, that they are all perfect and they can handle everything. So it's good to share sometimes when things go wrong, also with the young people. So I thank you. Thank you for making it much more clear what mental health is and what well-being is, and how to maintain it in a part of your work as a youth worker. And next, the podcast will be about the first-hand support that we as youth workers, youth information workers can give to young people, and we will talk about some techniques, we will talk about what it is more exactly, and as of this time and last time, we will have 2 guests and also a real-life story from a young person. But I thank you. This podcast was brought to you by ERYICA, the European Youth Information and Counseling Agency, and produced by the Education and Youth Board in Estonia, in cooperation with NGO Peaasi, Head Matters in English. It's co-funded by the European Union in the framework of the Erasmus+ YIMinds project on young people's mental health. Views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the host and the guest only, and do not necessarily reflect those of European Union. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them.